That's funny, my calendar just fell down. Funny stuff, I'm gonna fix that. This calendar is a pain in my butt. Hey guys, back again for my review of All Hail Megatron issue 6, and I'm just warning you guys right now, this may be my first two-parter review. This issue is chock full of something. I don't know if it's good or bad, but there's just so much to talk about in this. So really just might as well get started. First of all, we're back to my favorite cover. This is obviously the Trevor Hutchinson version for this issue, and this is one of my favorite out of all the covers that I have. Basically, this cover is a bunch of mechanical bugs. I first saw this and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this all about? But believe me, you will find out in this issue what this crazy cover is about. This crazy good cover. So let's just jump right into this. So it starts off with Cup and Jazz, and they're basically just talking about all the bad stuff that's going on. How Megatron assumes that he's won because he is the Matrix. How there's a traitor among the Autobots. How that traitor has been giving the Decepticons access codes, and the Decepticons have basically been decimating ships all over the place. One thing I would really like to quickly bring up that I wanted to talk about in my last review and totally forgot. Cup has this, what I'm guessing is supposed to be like a cigar that he has like throughout the series. I've not yet seen him without this thing, and it is distracting as heck. I'm pretty sure that Transformers can't smoke, and I don't know what he's getting out of having, I mean, it's not a real cigar, so I don't really know what he's getting out of having just a piece of metal in his mouth. I guess it makes him look cool. But it's really distracting to me, and I think it's hilarious. So as they're talking, Cup says that he wants Jazz to be his second in command. And as they're saying this, Prowl kind of jumps into their conversation and, you know, says, Jazz will do you really well. And then kind of out of nowhere, Jazz is like, oh, I'm just going to become one of Cup's little soldiers and blah, and I don't want to do that. And so him and Cup kind of have this argument, and then Cup leaves. This definitely sets up as to what we're going to see in this issue. There's a lot of talking, but I think it's funny talking. Then we cut to Megatron in Israel. Now this is a really interesting part of this issue. Starscream meets up with Megatron, and he starts talking about how Megatron is just this warrior king and a poet, and I'm like, this is kind of weird. But then he asks, where to now? And this brings up this conversation between Megatron and Starscream about, now that they've basically won Earth, where are they going to go from there? And Starscream just keeps pushing Megatron as to what they're going to do next. Now that they've won, where else do they have to go? Megatron's trying to tell him to savor their victory, and as a warrior, this is what they should have wanted. This is their reward. And Starscream says, well, if this is the reward, I must be a fool, because to me, this looks like a distraction. Interesting. We then cut to Skywarp having an argument with Bombshell. It doesn't really say what's prompted this argument between Bombshell and Skywarp, but Skywarp is threatening to kill Bombshell for some reason. So Bombshell basically starts insulting his intelligence, and Skywarp's like, you're like a bug, I should step on you. Haha, get it, you're like a bug. And then Bombshell uses words that are too big for Skywarp, like eloquent, which is funny. And they just keep arguing about being better than one another. And as they're arguing, Bombshell kind of makes a funny comment about how all the Seekers look the same. And Skywarp's like, oh, we're just paying homage to our leader. And so Bombshell's basically just making fun of the Seekers. And it's a funny nod to the fact that they do all look the same. Then Bombshell basically says that Skywarp knows that the Seekers are no longer Megatron's favorites. And so Skywarp just shoots him. And so as Bombshell's going to shoot back, Thundercracker comes up and he's like, take on one, you take on all of us, which then leads the other Insecticons to come in, and they're like, ha, there's 3 of us, and then Skywarp teleports around and chases them away. Okay, this next part with Skywarp and Thundercracker, I'm sorry, to me it's like a little mini Transformers soap opera. I'm not kidding. Because Skywarp talks about how he's all excited to be bullying people again, I guess, and Thundercracker's just silent and not saying anything. So this is their little conversation. So Skywarp's like, man, what's wrong? And Thundercracker's like, nothing. So then Skywarp's all, man, I'm like doing this by myself. And then comes to me the most soap opera-ish line in this whole issue. Skywarp says, you know, between you being all like this and Starscream hardly ever showing up, I'm starting to feel like I'm all alone out here. This is so funny. I'm sure it's supposed to be serious, but man, I was just laughing my butt off reading this issue. So then we go back to Cybertron, and we basically get Cup explaining why the Matrix is important. Cup explains that the Matrix is basically what is keeping the Autobots going right now. And even though Megatron has the fact that Prime is still alive at all, it gives them hope. But Cup still doesn't really want to tell the other Autobots that they don't have the Matrix anymore. So he talks about why the Matrix is important, and how it's been picking their leaders for as long as they've known. There's been a Prime to guide Cybertron, and he's had the Matrix, and that's basically it. And after that, Cup says if they lose the Matrix and Prime, things probably won't turn out too well. He suspects that they'll just break off into more factions, and that basically Cybertronians will just be all over the place, and there won't be any unity anymore. Then we get Ironhide's having a little conversation with Roadbuster about how they wish they could just beat up some Decepticons. And Ironhide notices something in the distance. And it's crazy looking. So they call over Cup, and we discover that it is the Swarm, or one member, I guess, of the Swarm. It's a scout. And Jazz says, you know, we can't let it get back to the others, and he's kind of nervous about it. And Cup's like, no, we have it taken care of. This is another part of the issue that's just funny. It's a funny thing. So Drift suddenly is right next to this thing, and he cuts its head off. Like, no problem. And another one comes up behind him and gets shot at, and it's Perceptor as a sniper. Huh. There's even a comment from Trax that says, when did Perceptor become scary? And of course Clip's number's like, oh, that was cool. I'm not kidding, that's what he says.